I was terrified, but I was determined. And I knew that this was something that I had to do at that moment in my career in order to be my genuine self and be authentic.
Welcome to Beyond the Blueprint, powered by Contractors, Closers, and Connections, Orlando. Join me for in-depth interviews with some of the top commercial real estate and development executives in the industry. We uncover their success stories, their strategies, and their lessons learned along the way. Gain valuable insight whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out. Welcome Beyond the Blueprint. I'm your host, Branson Bowen, and today we're getting into some commercial development. I'm sitting down with Chuck Hollis with Third Wave Development and learning a little bit more about his career, his development strategies, and how he got to where he is today. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel to keep us going, to bring you valuable content along the way. So here's Chuck. So I want to introduce yourself. You kind of go and kind of introduce yourself and figure out who you are, where you came from, and what you're about.
Absolutely. Obviously, Chuck Hollis of Third Wave Development. I started from very modest means. So coming out of high school, a lot of my friends were going off to college, and that was not in reach for my parents. And so ultimately, I worked a number of jobs, 4 total, including starting a landscaping company to put myself through college. And so within that realm, ultimately it became the landscaping company that put me through college. And I worked for a lot of developers. So the way I learned about the development business was working for them. And I started to understand how that world works. And so thought that might be an interesting area of study. And as I worked through college, I started to focus on that, ultimately graduating from UCF and then starting with Syntex Homes as a superintendent. Yeah. Building homes.
Hammers. Cutting grass and swinging the hammers.
Cutting grass and then moving into building, building homes. And so that was a really foundational approach for me, having done internships in appraisal, et cetera. And so I really knew that that's where I wanted to be. That's what I wanted to do.
So getting into, you're in college and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, right? There's a lot of people that, they might know a general direction of where they want to go. But development, you can have a bunch of different approaches, right? You can have the finance approach, you can have the construction approach, you can have the real estate approach.
Of course.
There's a lot of different avenues, but although they all tie together, you kind of got to pick one early on. So what did you pick and why did you pick that?
So I started with construction.
Okay.
As I mentioned, I had done, some different internships. The most significant was an appraisal internship that I did working with CNL Bank, and they were doing sale-leaseback transactions with Red Lobster and Olive Garden, et cetera. And I started to understand how that whole financial system worked. Mm-hmm. But then I really wanted to understand granular, because real estate doesn't really have value until it's created, until it's built and constructed, and there's a revenue source within the real estate itself. And so that's where I focused, and that's where I went to, the home building sector, which graduated in 2004. So it was the last run-up before the GFC. Yeah. And so learned a tremendous amount. And that kind of leads into some of the philosophical ways I kind of have about managing a business and people.
So you left construction, and then where did you go?
So I moved to Illinois in 2006 and wanted to, again, be in real estate development. So what happened, precipitous meeting, I end up in an interview with a gentleman by the name of Alexis Kazam, whom is now my business partner today. Yeah. And I went for a job interview to go work for the guy. And I'm furiously trying to understand who he is, what his company's about, et cetera. This is a big redevelopment project in central Illinois. where I knew nobody.
Yeah.
Coming from Orlando, Florida,
Yeah.
right?
So let's pause there and let's dive into that. So, because I have a similar experience moving to Orlando. I'm from Louisiana, moved here on a whim, didn't know anyone, and then had to just kind of scrounge and try to find. So, what was that experience like getting to Illinois?
So it was all about my family.
Yeah.
I wanted to have kids. And so I moved up there. That's my wife's family is from Central Illinois. Had no idea how cold it is up there in the in the winters,
Yeah.
and but nonetheless, we made that leap. We made that move,
Sure.
and so I reached out to the economic development director for the city of Peoria, Chris Setti. We met. He sent my resume out to I don't know a dozen developers, and Alexis was the last guy that he thought to send it to. I'm suit and tie, the whole thing. I go in for an interview the way you would typically expect. And the guys at the top of the stairs, the office was upstairs of this redevelopment project, and he's in jeans, sandals, and had long hair.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's up, man? And I'll never forget. So we walk into the conference room, and I'll never forget. He asked me one question when we sat down. He said, so if you could do anything that you want to do with your career in life, what would that be? And I didn't hesitate, didn't blink. I said, I want to be a real estate developer. And he said, well, this potentially might be the right opportunity because we were taking this colossal redevelopment. It was a shopping center, an office building, a hotel, a Department of Transportation building, and we were going to redevelop the whole thing. The only consideration is that Alexis came from software engineering and was not in the real estate development
Right.
business, and so and also he came from overseas, so we both landed in the same community
With no
for the
context.
same reason, but we made it work.
Sure.
And so that relationship is what has fostered, for nearly 2 decades and is what, really is the foundation of our business today.
Sure. So making those connections in Illinois, like how did you go about that? Like you got obviously introduced to them originally from the economic development.
Yep.
And then how did you foster relationships, find relationships, who you needed to talk to while you were in Illinois?
So this is back before LinkedIn and
Sure.
a lot of the other, sort of technology based relationship building platforms. And so it was really just going in and shaking hands with folks and introducing myself and saying, hey, I have a family and I want to work hard.
Sure.
And so can you help point me in the right direction for an opportunity that may be suitable?
Sure. So just one by one, door knocking.
Correct.
Yeah. I have a friend that he's in North Carolina. He worked for a broker when he first got his license. He said, I want to do commercial brokerage. And he goes and this older gentleman kind of introduces himself to him. He's like, I'm going to be your office, your broker of record. He's like, I'm going to teach you how to do brokerage. And he's, eager to learn, young. He goes in and he said, we're going to drive around for 2 hours. So he drives around for 2 hours. And this is, Charlotte, small town,
Yeah.
Hometown, kind of homegrown kind of thing. He goes and he walks into every industrial building, talks to the tenants, and they do that for about 2 hours. And then he goes, okay, that's how it's done. Never talk to him again. So, there's some value in just door knocking and just going one by one and trying to figure out how to build relationships.
You have to earn your way into whatever business endeavor that you choose to pursue.
Sure.
And you have to show folks that you really care about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to work hard to understand how they've gotten to where they are and
Right.
how they've set things up such that you can plug in and add value.
Correct.
Really, that's what it's all about, is trying to add value as an individual, as a company, etc.
Today's episode is brought to you by Bryce Knuth of Insurance Office of America. As a contractor or real estate owner in Florida, you've likely experienced the impact of rising insurance premiums year after year. With the challenging insurance marketplace, having a specialist who focuses on your industry is critical now more than ever before. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your current insurance program or don't have a relationship with your current broker, please contact Bryce Knuth at 407-697-6944 via call or text, or email bryce.knuth@ioausa.com. Don't let rising insurance costs catch you off guard. Reach out to Bryce today. So early on, where you're trying to add value to these individuals, because that's a big thing, especially in our industry,
Of course,
where
it's a people business, by the way.
100%. And there is a ton of companies out there that are just trying to get you work. You've got your salespeople and your business development that are just trying to just see if I can do a deal. But I think this industry specifically is about upfront value. So when you're in Illinois and you're meeting those individuals, trying to build a relationship with them, as early in your career, how did you go about trying to build value and bring value to those individuals?
Being genuine.
Yeah.
And doing a lot of listening, trying to understand the stories. What we were doing there in that particular development involved an old property that was very historic to the community and had a lot of community value, and a connection to the Chicago Cubs with a restaurant that was on the corner of this property we were trying to redevelop. And so, meeting with, 80-year-old guys that were telling us how and why this property was developed the way it was.
Right.
And then thinking through, okay, well, how do we take that and make that relatable to the plans that we have or are considering, for the project? And then how does that become something that is of value to the community moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
And that includes converting a rail line to a hiking and biking trail, so the rails to trails, and so some big complex components that weren't easy to tackle.
Sure, it's always a little.
But we were able to make those things happen as part of our development process.
Sure.
And so if you really kind of put the community piece first,
right,
and then develop your plans around that, I found over time, to this day, that's the best way to make something work such that everyone's happy with it at the end of the day.
Well, because, a lot of historically developers get a bad rap, right? It's just people putting in commercial buildings in these neighborhoods. And
correct.
But I believe in order, you've got to have development, you've got to have industrial infrastructure in order to support the community, whether it's restaurants, retail, healthcare, office buildings, hotels, anything. But it's got to, your development as a whole from a master planning standpoint has to be able to support that community. And I think that moving forward, there is an opportunity. And from what my experience has been, at least whether it's interviews or people that I've known, there are a lot of developers that are really trying to involve the community, trying to make sure that they're not just going down and mowing down these houses in order to develop what they want to develop. So I think it's important.
It's 100% part of our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And I think done correctly, and you open yourself up to a lot of criticism by being out in the forefront of that type of approach.
Sure.
But in our minds, it's the only approach.
Right.
And so we spend a lot of time, whether it's sitting in the backyard with a neighbor that is, next to a proposed project of yours, and listening to what they have to say about how that particular development might look from their backyard.
Right.
To, other granular types of approaches within the community itself. And so that's been a hallmark for us, and
Sure.
and has worked.
I think that's a big key to allowing development to keep moving forward, and for the best community's advantage. So you're in Illinois, and how do you get back to Florida?
So we
Obviously, you
spent about
drove.
10 years there. And so we did this, pretty large scale redevelopment with this rail to trail component as well. Immediately adjacent that, we did a new development, ground up retail, center, and had started moving into student housing. And then my wife and I are looking at each other saying, okay, well, we finished everything we started development wise. And the kids are about at an age that, either we're going to stay here for the long haul or we might make a move. And we love Florida. I grew up here. We love the beach and the lakes and all of the things that Florida has to offer. And so we made the decision that we were going to move back and basically give the kids, second half of their childhood, and we wouldn't do it any other way.
Yeah.
It's been a fantastic move for us. Our family's extremely happy here, and so
You throw your winter coats in the closet. You get about a week worth of semi-coldness here,
which we utilize when we go back to Illinois for the holidays.
There you go.
So
you get it out. So you're back in Orlando, and then how do you kind of get back in grade? Because we kind of talked a little bit off air how like you spending 10 years out of Orlando was a lot more challenging than you originally thought. So what did that look like, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I originally thought that, hey, I've got a great network in Orlando and I can kind of jump in. I had spent 10 years in Illinois and I kind of had that wired over time. And so moved back here and was able to, kind of jump in right away, working with and for some other developers, and work for some really intelligent and extremely successful folks to sort of learn my way back into this particular market. The opportunity, multifamily, is ultimately where I settled, and was very fortunate to be able to make that path work to get to some semblance of a business plan.
Sure.
And always kind of had in the back of my mind personal investment in real estate. I'd been doing it since I was in college at UCF and had made some investments along the way once we got back into Orlando. So enter the pandemic.
Yeah.
And everyone's trying to figure out which way is up.
Right.
And so ultimately I decided October 19th, 2020, that I had to do it on my own, meaning launch my own company.
Sure.
I had put myself through college with a landscaping company that I built from the ground up. And my kids are of the age now where they are watching what I'm doing. And so I had to prove to them that I could do what I'm doing, and create a company.
Sure.
And so that's what we did right in the middle of the pandemic.
Now, looking back at that, are you like, okay, yeah, you're glad you did it? Because I'm sure there was some hardship, especially at first. You're like, oh, I've made the wrong decision. Were there any of those moments?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was terrified, but I was determined. And I knew that this was something that I had to do at that moment in my career in order to be my genuine self and be authentic. And so I use the word genuine all the time. And so making that decision was not easy. And so one of the things that people think about real estate development is it's kind of a sexy profession, and it's, nothing but glitz and glamour and, big projects that, cost a lot of money. But what they also don't understand are the mornings that I woke up with dry heaves. I was that scared for my family and our future economically. But it was the best decision of my career.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we'll get into the non-sexy part of development in part two.
There's plenty of that.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I got two questions. The first question is going to be, why commercial real estate? So why was that? Obviously, you knew very early on that you wanted to be in development. You wanted to have commercial real estate in your belt. You were involved with it early on, but what directly attracted you to wanting to be a commercial developer and in a whole be involved in the commercial real estate process?
So two components. So one, my grandfather was a carpenter, and so the building of things is in my blood. And number two, the education that I got at University of Central Florida, and a couple of the courses that were pivotal, real estate investment analysis, for me, like mind blown when I took that course, and understanding how and why the capital flows into that asset class.
Right.
I was forever, interested in it, and have always been a student of it since that time until right this moment. And so that's really kind of what led my path. And then I wanted to understand all of the different components, whether it be appraisal, construction, finance, etc., how you capitalize a deal. And that's really what kind of started to move and shape me from being a superintendent for Centex Homes into commercial development.
Sure.
And the commercial development component fascinated me more because of the additional layer of complexity, or layers of complexity.
Sure. And then the second question is, did you ever think you would be a business owner?
I was a business owner while I was going through college.
Sure.
And I enjoyed that. But I never had the dream early on that I might be able to be a business owner at that level.
Sure.
And so what I will tell the audience is that it is possible. You can make that happen.
What is the biggest challenge right now? Because you're 2.5 years in or so, 2 years?
Yeah, we'll celebrate our third year anniversary this October.
Great, congratulations.
Thank you. Third year for Third Wave, right?
There you go.
That's got a nice zing to it.
Yeah. What's been the biggest hurdle you think so far in year 3?
Seeing it through the times that I wasn't certain.
Yeah.
And being able to figure out a way through some of the challenges. We're in an incredibly intensive, capital intensive business. And so everything that we do, if you're pursuing a project, let's say, from the ground, 250 unit apartment, community, you're several $100,000 in before you know if you even works. Can do it if you have the approval. And so being able to move through that process and fund that process is, I would say, one of the biggest challenges. And so getting through that, and quite candidly, having a business partner, by my side that is fully committed, to what we're doing, was fundamental to our ability to get to where we are.
Sure. So, that's very invaluable, and we'll get into, again, that in part 2, because I want to dive into just kind of the nitty gritty of development, right? And, I want to allow our audience to learn about, what development really is, and then also empower them to jump into that next level of career choice wherever they go. So we'll jump into that in part 2. So
awesome.
Beyond the Blueprint, this is Branson Bowen, and this is Chuck Hollis with Third Wave Development. We have been a pleasure sitting down on episode 1. Make sure you like and subscribe for episode 2. We'll jump into the nitty gritty of development next time.